Hello, and thank you for tuning in to watch this video all about marketing your MAS contract, marketing your multiple award schedule contract, positioning for success. So I'm going to walk you through some tips and tricks that I've learned over the years that could help you be more successful in the federal marketplace. Before we do that, my name is Robin. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. I'm a program analyst with GSA. I've been with GSA for 16 years, done over 1,000 on-site visits during that time, quite a bit. On-site meaning at your location, in your conference room, wherever you do business. I then went on to write the policy that governs how vendor performance is assessed. And now I teach, and I try to help vendors be successful. And that's what I'm going to try to do today. I'm going to try to use some of those experiences to explain to you what I've seen over the years that really separates the successful vendors from those that are less successful. So what I'm going to do is talk about the federal marketplace. Really, I'd like you to understand what you've gotten yourself into and what you are likely to encounter as you go ahead. And then I'm going to walk you through some tips and some tricks and some tools, but I'm not going to do a nuts and bolts deep dive. I'm not going to show you the websites and show you all the mouse clicks that you need to do. I'm going to leave that up to you. Rather, I'd like to paint a broad picture to help you really understand how you need to position yourself for success. And that starts with understanding the federal market. So I've got some statistics here. These are from FY19, but they were pretty similar in FY20, and they'll be pretty similar in FY21 as well. There are about 560 billion in contract purchases made through about 1.2 million different procurements. 1.2 million purchases took place, and those were spread out among over 98,000 different unique vendors. So a large volume, a lot is going on in the federal market. There are some trends that I think are important to note as well. It's been growing about 5% per year since 2014. Over half of those numbers I just mentioned are defense related. Keep that in mind. I'm going to come back to that as we go forward. About 22% is with small business. So if you're listening to this and you're one of our small business vendors, you should take note as well. So that's very broad strokes, the global perspective of the federal market. And I'm going to dive a little bit deeper. I want to explain to you GSA's role in this whole process. So if you're not familiar, GSA stands for General Services Administration. That's the agency I work for. That's the agency that administers the Multiple Award Schedule program, or the MAS program. So GSA has something called the Office of Customer and Stakeholder Engagement. That's the group that I work for. Now, this is essentially the marketing wing of GSA. CASE, as we like to call it, as we shorten things a lot. CASE, their whole mission is to promote the use of GSA products and services. So we go out to customers. What we call customers would be the Army, the Navy, the people that buy from our contracts, the different federal agencies. So CASE's whole mission is to go out and market GSA to other federal agencies and say, hey, use our services. Let us help you. Use one of our contracts we already have set up, like the Multiple Award Schedule program. So these bullet points to kind of walk you through that. There's a variety of programs to promote the use of GSA solutions. Now, within CASE, there are these individuals called customer service directors, and there's listings of these on the GSA website. You can look all this up. CSDs work with buyers in certain territories. So they're assigned a territory, and any buyers, any customers in that territory, they are responsible for. There's also national account managers that work with individual buyers. So there's a national account manager for the Army, there's one for DHS, etc. And then we also do our trade shows. We do outreach events, websites, industry days. You've probably heard of those. I only tell you this because I want you to understand that GSA has a role in this process, and that my hope is that you can kind of follow along in our wake and reap some of the benefits of what GSA is doing and align yourself to some of the initiatives GSA is pursuing. Doing so is going to help you tremendously down the road because you won't be swimming upstream. You'll be kind of swimming with the current. Hopefully that makes sense. So GSA does have a role to play, but I want to talk about your role. Where do you fit into this mixture? This is paramount to you being successful. Too often, what I have seen personally in the field is that vendors really don't understand exactly where they fit. And they haven't asked themselves some of these basic questions. They've just heard, hey, get a government contract. The money will rain down on you. Everything will be great. It's not exactly true. So you need to ask yourself some things. Does anyone need what you're selling? Now, obviously, in the commercial world, somebody needs what you're selling because you are a business that's in the business of selling whatever it is that you sell, right? So somebody needs it. What I'm asking here is, does anyone in the federal space need what you're selling? And that's going to be different than in the kind of commercial world. What problem are you solving? I'm going to harp on this quite a bit. You need to be able to answer this question. The prerequisite to answering this, though, is understanding what's going on in federal procurement, understanding what those pressure points are, is what I like to call them. New legislation that got passed, new requirements that have to be met, new executive orders that might impact different pieces of legislation. So what problem are you solving, giving all that mixture of things that are happening in the federal space? Keeping in mind, these are tax dollars, heavily regulated, rightfully so. We don't want tax dollars to be wasted. So educate yourself on some of those pressure points, some of the regulations, so that you can better articulate your value proposition, what you do best, what problem you're solving. Why would someone buy from you? That goes right into what I was just talking about. How do you differentiate yourself from the competition? Why should I buy from you as opposed to somebody else? Or what makes you the best value? Best value, I put that in quotation marks because that's a phrase that's thrown around a lot. It comes straight from the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulations. If you're not familiar with the FAR, write that down. Quick homework assignment. Google it. It's all available online in its entirety. A lot to digest in there. This is not a FAR course, but I need you to be aware that there is something called a FAR, and it dictates how federal dollars can be spent to procure goods and services. And then I've already touched on this last bullet point. How do you intend to stay tuned to procurement trends and to what's happening in the world of procurement? All right, so understanding where you fit to me is paramount. That's why I've got it right here at the beginning. You really need to know the problem you're solving, your best value, why someone should buy from you. Be able to articulate in terms that your customer will respond to. That's going to be different than it is for your commercial customers. So I think it also helps to understand who are the major players, right? Now, this is all public information. You can just Google search any of this stuff. So I'm not giving you anything that you couldn't get on your iPad with just a few points and clicks. Lockheed Martin, $50 billion annually in the government marketplace. Boeing, $24 billion. General Dynamics, Raytheon. Big numbers, right? The top 100 vendors in the federal marketplace do about $110 billion annually. To put that another way, 0.1% of vendors, a tenth of a percentage of vendors, do 20% of all the business, right? I want you to keep that in mind as you start to embark upon this journey in the federal marketplace. There are some highly successful vendors out there. The top less than 1% do 20% of all the business. Now, why do I bring that up? I don't want to discourage anyone because I'm not just going to show you one side of this coin. I want to show you both sides. I mentioned these major players because they 50 billion annually, 20 billion annually. Those are big numbers, but they couldn't do it without their network of subcontractors. And each one of those large businesses that I've listed here has subcontracting goals that they have to meet. It's mandated that they have to use small businesses to assist them in these procurements. So it might be that maybe you're not positioned at the moment to be a prime contractor on any of these projects. However, there's a ton of opportunity to be a subcontractor or to be in that support system for one of these large businesses. I can't tell you either one of these. If you go to their websites, they're going to have something that says doing business with Lockheed Martin, doing business with Raytheon, something along those lines. So I'll let you kind of use your investigative tools to go down those rabbit holes. But I don't want to discourage you in any way from looking at not just prime contracting, but subcontracting opportunities. All right, so let's talk about specifically, I want to drill down to just the multiple awards schedule program, or MAS as we like to call it. MAS, MAS, a lot of times it's just called the schedule program for multiple awards schedule. This is our most popular program. That's why I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about it. And it's probably the reason why you clicked on this video in the first place. $64 billion go through GSA programs and all each year. Of that, 44 billion goes through the MAS program. So as you can see, it's our most popular program by far. Top 5 agencies and what they spend through MAS. So the DoD spends about 9.9 billion through the schedule program. Homeland Security, 978 million. Department of Justice, Department of Agriculture, Health and Human Services. So when you look at that top 5, one thing is hopefully should jump out at you. DoD does 68% of our overall MAS business, multiple award schedule business, goes to DoD agencies. The next closest, Homeland Security, is less than 10%. So if you're listening to this and you're starting your journey, another homework assignment, write it down on your notepad and say, I need to look into how to do business with the Department of Defense. Underline it, circle it, come back to it later, because it represents such a huge piece of the pie in terms of the multiple award schedule world. So if you're not targeting a defense agency at the moment, you're missing out. You almost have to. I think it should be mandatory that you look. This is just me, rule of thumb talking, this is not a mandatory requirement. I think you should consider it mandatory that you want to try to do business with the Department of Defense, or at least explore that in some capacity, Army, Navy, etc. How much is spent with small business though? So just under $1 billion a year through this program goes to small business. That's 34%. And I've put that that's higher than the government-wide average. And that is huge. I think it's like 22% is the government-wide average for small business. 34% of those dollars go to small businesses in the MAS program. That's huge because the majority of our vendors are small business. So a lot of opportunities out there. If you're listening to me talk and you're a small business, you're in the right place. Sticking with the schedules program, the schedule program, let's talk about that specifically. There's about 15,000 total MAS vendors at any given time. That fluctuates quite a bit, but on the whole, that's kind of where we average at any given point in time. We do about 1,500 new awards a year. So new vendors coming onto the schedule every single year. We have 35 billion products and services on schedule. So it's a pretty giant program. 83% of those are small business. But like I mentioned, 34% of the sales go to small business. So there's some inequity kind of built into it, but that's understandable. The large primes typically get the higher dollar amount. The top 100 vendors, I like to make lists, top 10, top 100, whatever. Top 100 vendors get 15.8 billion. So 0.6% of vendors in that top 100 get 35% of the business. So again, just like the federal government overall, you can see that there's a small portion that does the majority of the business in the MAS world. The good news is what I'm telling you is the same thing I've told them when I met with them on site. So you have the same tools at your disposal that 0.6% of vendors have. Now, this is the big one that I think too often doesn't get mentioned. This last bullet point, 50% don't meet minimum sales requirements. That means half of vendors don't make it past 24 months. Each one of these contracts, multiple award schedule contracts, has a minimum sales requirement clause built into it. It says you have to generate and report $25,000 in sales over the first 24 months, and then maintain 25,000 every 12 months after that, 25,000 a year, basically. So right off the bat, half of vendors don't meet that after the first 24 months, and they get canceled for low sales. That's not something that we typically advertise or promote, but in terms of marketing, I think it's really important to understand. And I don't say this to scare anyone off or to discourage you from going down this path, but I think it's important to go into it with your eyes open and understand the reality of the situation is that a lot of vendors simply don't understand it enough or don't can't point themselves in the right direction in order to meet those minimum sales requirements. There's a lot of reasons why it just won't work for some vendors. But for other vendors, I think it comes down to a lack of knowledge and a lack of information. So hopefully you just being here, listening to this, participating in this video is going to help you out quite a bit. So I don't say that to scare anyone. You're in the right place. You're in good hands. We need our vendors, but it is competitive, and you do have some steps that you need to take pretty urgently in order to be successful. Starting with developing a sales and marketing strategy. And that's why we're here. We're going to talk about marketing. So marketing, again, we're talking about the federal marketplace. How do you fit into that? That's what marketing is. I'm not going to tell you this is what your advertising campaign should say and use these words and this particular phrasing. I'm not going to do any of that today. But I'm going to tell you do need a strategy. So I'm going to say all this, but keep in mind, what we've found in the past is that multiple award schedule business is typically 25% or less of your total business. I'd recommend anybody keep it at that. That's kind of a good mixture. You don't want it to be too great of your business, because then that jeopardizes, if you don't have the diversity, of course, I'm not telling you guys anything you don't know. You're business owners. You just want to do it the right way. What customers are you going to target? How do you plan to train your sales staff? How much are you willing to spend to acquire those customers? What makes you the best value? Again, I've mentioned that already. What's your customer retention strategy, and what tools are you going to use? Just some basic questions you should be asking yourself when you start to think about where do you want to begin, right? You've got the whole world of the federal marketplace in front of you. Do you want to start over here? Do you want to go this way? Where do you want to begin your journey? So think about what customers you're going to target. Start to make a list. How are you going to train your sales staff? So if it's just you, it's pretty straightforward. If you've got 10 salespeople and all of them have the ability to interact with federal customers, how are you going to train them and teach them about all the nuances of the federal procurement? How much are you willing to spend? How much spend in terms of time, energy, emotional investment, and then last but not least, of course, actual money. How much are you going to spend to acquire these new customers? What are you willing to sacrifice? And then what makes you the best value? You need to have that elevator pitch ready to go at a moment's notice. Because if a customer calls you up and they say, hey, we want to buy from you, but we haven't, what makes you the best value? Probably not going to happen. Hypothetically, though, you need to be able to answer that question. And then how do you plan to keep those customers? Repeat customers are the name of the game, and we all know why. It's a whole lot less to keep a customer than it is to get a new customer. So what do you intend to do to make sure that you can not only get business from the Air Force, but keep them coming back for more over and over again? And then what tools are you going to use? That's the next slide here. So I feel free to take a screenshot of this, write it down, whatever you need to do, pause right here and search through it. All of these can be Google searched. These are some of the very basic tools that I would recommend that you start to look at, and so that you can develop a sales and marketing strategy. So the Schedule Z library. If you want to know information about some of your competitors, right? Schedule Z library is a great place to go, because you can narrow it down based on different categories. So you could say, okay, I sell lawnmowers. I want to see all the other vendors that sell lawnmowers on the MASS program. So you might find one and you might say, okay, now I want to see what their website's like. I want to see what some of their pricing's like. I want to see what type of marketing material they might have. I want to learn from some of these people. A lot of great information on there. Beta.sam.gov, sam.gov now. I think it's been changed since this was made. Second one, federal business opportunities. This is where you went when you initially got your multiple award schedule contract, when you downloaded that solicitation. Again, this is for the open market. So anything in what we call the open market, which is worldwide. That means the customer's not narrowing it down to a certain, they're not just looking at the schedules program. They're going to say, okay, we have a need for a new widget. We're going to put it out there on beta.sam.gov, and we're going to let anyone with internet access submit an offer. GSA eBuy is the next one in line. That's specific to the schedules program. So This is our most popular tool by far, because what it does is it says a customer can go in there and say, okay, I'm just limiting this to the schedules program. I don't want to consider anyone that doesn't have a mass contract. So right off the bat, if you don't have a mass contract, you don't get access to GSA eBuy, you don't get access to GSA Advantage, any of these other great tools. There are things happening right now that you'll never know about unless you have a mass contract. You don't even get a seat at the table. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, where do I get started in the federal market? Without a doubt, I'm going to recommend you get a mass contract, a multiple award schedule contract. From there, it's going to open up a lot of doors and make your journey a lot easier. The rest of these are just ways where you can gather information, learn more, keep yourself up to date on what's happening in the world of federal procurement. Subcontracting things, the SBA, different procurement forecasts that a lot of agencies put out. Lots of great information available. This by no means is an exhaustive list. My goodness, we could have 30 slides that were just like this of resources and websites and places I want to send you to. Google's going to be your best friend though. This is just to get you started, to point you in the right direction so that you can start to make those decisions along the way. So one of the things that I do working in case, like I mentioned, is I spend a lot of time with our customers from GSA and customers from other agencies as well, people that are in charge of spending money. This is what they tell me. They say, mass is so much easier. It's my preference every time. The mass program, multiple award schedule program, makes life so much easier for customers. I know there's some hoops to jump through for you as a vendor to get your schedule contract. But in doing so, in jumping through those hoops, you jump through them one time. From that point on, you've got a hunting license to go and sell your products and services without having to jump through those hoops every single time. Once you have a schedule contract, buyers just place orders with you. They don't issue contracts to you. That is a huge, huge point that I want to make clear. Someone in the mass world, once you have a mass contract, buyers can just call you up and say, hey, I need 10 of your widgets, your lawnmowers, your fish tanks, whatever it happens to be, without even going into the open market, without publishing it on any of these other websites. It's so much easier. I'm not getting into the nuts and bolts of federal acquisition regulations and how it works. Take my word for it. It's easier. If you want to learn more, Google search FAR 8.4, another homework assignment for you. You can pause right now and go Google search that. That dictates how federal agencies can buy from the schedules program, how they can buy from your schedule contract. The rest of this, I'd rather avoid the open market if possible. It's a hassle. If you've ever done business in the open market or been awarded an entirely new contract, it's a hassle, right? You were awarded a multiple award schedule contract in the open market. You remember what that process was like. It was lengthy, a lot of hoops to jump through. Our buyers would rather avoid having to do that every single time if they don't have to. The rest of this is they have socioeconomic goals they want to meet, right? So they need, they need small businesses. They need women-owned businesses, service-disabled, veteran-owned businesses, all that. They have goals. Each agency has goals that they have to meet. So be sure that you're promoting that. Be sure that that is clear, crystal clear on all of your marketing information on your website. Make it easy to find. We're a hub zone. We're an 8A, whatever it happens to be. I buy from people that take the time to search me out. So a lot of my experience in the field is I'll ask vendors, okay, have you searched out any customers? And if they say no, right off the bat, I know that they have some work to do. But if you've taken the time to search out customers, I would not hesitate to send some unsolicited information to them. Because when we buy something off Amazon or eBay or whatever it is, we buy something off the internet, and some of us take the time and we research it and we read the reviews and we do everything, and we'll spend a whole day and then we'll sleep on it and then maybe we'll buy it the next day. Well, think if that was your job and you had to do that over and over again a lot of the time. It becomes a full-time job. That's what the job is for these contracting officers. It's just making sure that they're getting the best value every single time. So if a vendor takes the time to search them out and say, hey, we can make your life easier, we understand these pressure points, you're putting yourself ahead of the competition. some of these other things. I can't find them on Advantage. They don't have the items I want on schedule. I encourage vendors all the time. If you offer 10 things and you only have one thing on your schedule, why don't you have those other 9 things on there? You're going to make your life a lot easier. You're going to broaden your appeal the more that you have on your contract. So let me recap real quick. I know this says questions, but I just want to recap real quick a few things. If you're still listening, if you're still with me, write some of this down. You need to have a plan. You need to be able to target those customers. You need to understand the marketplace and understand that maybe the timing isn't right for you to be a prime vendor. Maybe you want to subcontract with some of these larger vendors, because you want to make sure that you're positioning yourself for success. I wish you all the best of luck. Be safe and be kind to one another. Thank you.